100 different things to get to in one show? All right, probably not likely, but we'll do our best to get through some of them. It's coming up because it is time for Zero Blitz. He's Frank Schwab. He's Charles Robinson. I'm Jason Fitz. It's Zero Blitz on a beautiful Thursday afternoon. Gentlemen, how we doing? Everybody feeling good? C-Rob, you feeling good? Like owners' meetings and conversations going on? Is it wearing you out, or is C-Rob in a happy place today?
No, it's great now. There's actually people talking. There's guys on the football field doing things. So we're starting to pick it up into I guess mid-June when we do full squads and we actually get a little break. But yeah, this is great. I'm happy. Everybody's Lamar Jackson looks like he's on Ozempic.
Dude,
I need to get on that diet plan,
like,
man. Yeah,
look, I mean, we'll talk about diet plans because look, C-Rob hasn't heard this. Jori had to listen to this last week. C-Rob, I am now almost 2 weeks in to eating exactly the same things at the exact same times from a trainer and drinking only water. There's been no caffeine in my blood at all for almost 2 weeks, and I'm still surviving, my friend. So, this level of Energizer Bunny coming. But yeah, I looked at Lamar and I'm like, I don't know what he took this summer, but good God. And this is that moment though every year where when guys take off a bunch of weight, we're like, oh, it's going to make them even faster. And then they go into the season and say, well, it was a little too light. Like, I have no idea what it really means, but it was jarring, y'all, to see him walk out and see the physical difference for a grown-ass man that was an MVP last year to now look so different this season. It hit me as a wild, what going on there?
Yeah, I thought my favorite part of it was when John Harbaugh got asked about it, and he was like, yeah, he's a pro. He knows what he's doing. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, does he fully believe this right now? Or is this just sort of the organization going, okay, it's his body. He's doing what it's telling him. He clearly feels like he's going to be a more agile player. And I ended up writing about this. Frank, like, you and I have covered the league long enough. We have seen like quarterbacks, high upper tier quarterbacks do this, where as their career goes on, they start to change themselves physically and with purpose. Like, Tom Brady bulked up when he came in the league. Then he changed the weight to be more flexible. He did thin out as time passed. Aaron Rodgers did the same thing. He came in a bigger player. He thinned out as time went along. Drew Brees, even Ben Roethlisberger, who I could not go through camp in Pittsburgh in the summer without people being like, yeah, Ben showed up fat again. Like, even Ben at the end of his career started to show up in shape for training camp, which was unusual. And I just have to wonder if this is Lamar going into his 7th season saying, I just feel better at this weight.
A couple things about it. Yeah, I think so. I think he's just a pretty self-aware guy that realizes this is what I need to do. I also, honestly, when I saw the side-by-side of like then and now, I was like, I didn't remember Lamar being that jacked. Like, he was
he was
like, dude, like, wow. I did not remember that about Lamar. He knows what he's doing. Like John said, he's a pro. He gets it. John Harbaugh's not going in and messing with Lamar Jackson's training regimen. I think he's a vet now. He knows exactly where he needs to be. Also, another guy who's done this is Joe Burrow. I mean, I was when he talked to the Bengals reporters a week or two ago, a lot of it was, hey, you've put on a lot of weight, haven't you? And Burrow said, yeah, completely changed how I eat. I put on a lot of good weight, a lot of muscle. I'm not going to say how much, but I feel good. I feel great where I'm at. And I think guys just adjust. I mean, the rigors of the NFL are different for everybody. For Lamar, it's probably, he lives on his agility, feeling maybe a half step slow last year. Not that it showed, but he probably wanted to be a half step quicker this year. For Burrow, who's dealt with some injuries, maybe was putting on some good weight and changing his eating habits. So these guys really are the good ones anyway, the ones who want to last 15, 20 years in this league. They realize what they got to do to get it done. And so props to Lamar.
Yeah, but hear me out on this, guys, because we're not that far removed from a draft season. I know, very different, but come on. Jaden Daniels was, he wants to run around on the field, but he's much more slight than Lamar. And then Lamar comes in more slight than he was last year. Like, it just feels at some point like it's funny how as guys get into the league, we're like, yeah, no worries. But when guys are coming into the league, we're just convinced that a scrawny guy can never become a big guy. Look at Max Crosby the year he was drafted versus Max Crosby now, and tell me that no matter what your frame is, you can't get as big as you want to once you start working in the NFL. Like, there is this moment. That's all. I just kept thinking about how if we had seen this version of Lamar 2 days before the draft, would we had said the same thing, C-Rob, about Jaden that we did when he was drafted?
Well, I mean, Lamar Lamar played at, and I talked to somebody close to Lamar and I asked him, I said, what was he playing at Louisville? And he said, look, 205 to 2010 was kind of where he played at in college. He showed up at the combine at 216. And then, I was like, where was the peak? And he said, look, it was the 2022 calendar year, which Frank referenced the picture that I put up on Twitter, on X. It was between 230 and 240. And the fact that I was given a range leads me to believe it was like 240. Okay. There wouldn't have been a range. It's always the upper end of the range when you get a range. And if he was playing at 240 and wants to play around 210, 215, now he said below 230. I mean, if he is below 230 right now, he is rocked up. Like, he's very solid. Whatever the weight that's on him has to be mostly muscle, because he looks about as thin as he was when he came into the league. And I think the one thing where you talk about Jaden Daniels, we don't know how his game is going to adjust to his frame in the NFL. With Lamar, it's year 7. I think now he is making choices based on how he feels. Like, what do I feel good at? He won his first MVP at a weight that was similar to this, right? I would argue that was the most dynamic season he had as a runner. And by the way, he put on that weight, and what happened? In 2022, he suffered the worst injury of his career while he was at the bigger weight. So if Lamar Jackson's out there going, yeah, I added weight, but it made me feel less agile, and I started taking more punishment because of that weight, then I can understand him wanting to thin out a little bit. We'll see how it goes. And honestly, let's be real. Let's see what he looks like once the regular season starts as well.
One big thing, too, is just both of those guys could be about the same weight, Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson. But Jaden Daniels, one of the knocks on him was he doesn't get down. He doesn't slide. He takes those hits.
Yeah,
and think about this. I mean, Lamar Jackson has set records upon records upon records for rushing attempts for a quarterback. Try to think about the last time you saw Lamar Jackson really get plastered. It doesn't happen. He's like Gretzky that way. They always talk about Gretzky. Gretzky was a pretty small dude compared to the other NHL guys of that era. He never took a big hit. He was so adept at always moving his body so where he never took just a straight on huge hit. And Lamar's the same way. I'm sure it has happened and I'm just forgetting it, but I can't tell you a time when I'm like, ooh, Lamar just took a massive hit.
There's not a reel of it. There's definitely not a reel of it.
Yeah, even the injuries have been kind of fluky type of injuries. So I think that's where we fall into some mistakes compared weight. I mean, this guy plays it this way. Well, yeah, if Jaden Daniels is going to be 205 and doesn't want to slide and just keeps taking huge hits from linebackers, that's going to be a problem. Whereas Lamar just has a knack for never taking those kind of hits.
So speaking of taking hits, the other thing that came out of at least some of the owners' conversation, Raj out there, our good friend Roger Goodell, floating that an 18th game could be discussed soon. Now, I want to reach back here and just pat myself on the back. Because, C-Rob, we were together in L.A., and we were getting ready for the draft coverage. And I remember the report came out that they're going to let the guys choose to wear the marshmallow hats if they want on top of their helmets to make everybody. And the first thing I said to everybody as we hear that news is, yeah, the league's just softening the blow for an 18th game. Because now if you say, well, player safety, they can say, no, we'll let them wear the padded helmets. If they want to be more safe, they can. Like, the league was setting up their argument of we care about player safety so they could turn around and now add an 18th game. I saw it coming. Now we're hearing it, C-Rob. So where are we on the process from what you're hearing of actually adding that game?
Well, the owners are for it. Okay. Like, there's no question. It's not, Roger Goodell doesn't have to do much, cajoling to get the ownership group on board with a game that, frankly, if you add an 18th game to the schedule, that's $1 billion of total revenue across the board. When you kick in,
that's with a B.
Yeah, that represents $1 billion in terms of what the teams across the board, what will be generated from an 18th game on the schedule. And I think the thing is, though, that mystifies me is when Roger talks about this, he says, well, more regular season games are better than more preseason games. So it's like, we'll trade off some preseason games in order to make this 18th game happen. That's not what's going to make it happen. I've talked to the union, okay? And I'm going to tell you right now, we talked about this on the draft show. It's going to be about money, first and foremost, multiple percentage points of that pie. And I think they're at like 49.5% right now. That's going to have to get up to like 52%. That's going to have to be another $600 million into the salary cap system in year one, okay? And then they're going to have to lengthen the offseason in terms of the time off that players get, which is just going to piss off coaching staffs. They're going to say, we don't get guys out here enough. We don't do enough as it is. And now you want to take them off the field even more, which is what players are going to push for. The union's going to push for. They're going to say, let's have a start in July. We're going to take the offseason off at the very start of July 1 or after the July 4th weekend, whatever. We'll use that as a 2-month ramp up period into the regular season. And then, there will be the buys and the removal of, there's got to be 2 buys and then less preseason games and all that stuff. That's fine. But start first and foremost with the money. And if you hear the league say anything that doesn't have dollars and cents attached to it, just know it's not getting done without a significant amount of money changing hands.
I just don't. I have to ask you this, Charles, aside from the obvious, which is money, what good does this do for the product? Who's clamoring for an 18th game? Does this make the NFL product any better? And it doesn't. And here's what I have a problem with. College football has basically just ruined their entire product for greed. They don't care about conferences or rivalries and anything that happens. They're just bottom line, what makes us the most money, period. And I think it is absolutely harmed their sport. The NFL, look, they do a lot of greedy things. We both know that. But I also do think at the back of their mind, you're like, is this bad for the product? An 18th game in no way is good for the product. And they can't even argue it. I don't even think that they can sit there with a straight face and say, well, an 18th game is better because of blah, blah, blah. And to your point about preseason, like they talk about, oh, well, we'll just get rid of a preseason game for a regular season game. To bring up a name we just talked about, Lamar Jackson ain't playing in a preseason anyway. Like, how many teams sit there? Like, these, it's you're asking the top guys to play an extra game without any benefit whatsoever.
Okay,
like you said, maybe if the money happens, but I just don't get this. I don't like it at all.
Frank, at the end of the day, though, if someone at Coca-Cola says, hey, if we change the formula 1%, okay, we're going to sell 20% more Coke, but it's only going to taste 95% as good. They're going to change it, okay? Like, they're going to go ahead.
I don't even like the 95%, Charles. This is... You're talking about by the time teams get to the playoffs.
I get that. Look, I'm not. You're arguing from a logical standpoint of what the product looks like. But the problem is, it's not. The money is the logic here for the NFL. And right now, what they see is expanded television. Right? That's more money in the system from the television. That's more concessions. That's more this. That's more that. That's another week deeper into February that we can take our product and showcase the Super Bowl in mid-February and then move right into the combine 1 week later. So it's all about money right now. And you can't keep approaching it from, well, what's the product going to look like? The product keeps selling.
This is the second week that Frank and I massively disagreed on this. I believe, to my core, right now, if you filled a stadium, if you went into Nashville or Buffalo or Vegas, you filled that stadium and you're standing at midfield and you're talking just the diehard fans and they're in the stadium. You got 100,000 people looking at you and you've got the microphone and all of a sudden you say, all right, y'all, what if I told you I could give you more Raiders football? That crowd is going to go berserk, and they don't care if it's backups versus backups. They don't care if it's trash versus trash. Fans want
No, I
more,
disagree with that. I disagree with
more.
that completely about trash versus trash. Like, if you're telling me that we get to week 19, oh my God, I can't even say, I believe I said that. Week 20, if we give them a second bye, that it's going to be Tyler Huntley versus Tyrod Taylor. Like, people tune out at some point. Do people
If
tune
the
out
Raiders
at some
are
point?
playing the third stringers for the Chiefs, I'm still watching it. And all I care about is, can my third string team beat their third string team? That's all I care. Like, I'm just wearing a fan hat here, y'all. Like, I'm not thinking as a human being. I'm not thinking about players. I'm just wearing my fan hat. You want to give me more Raiders football? I'm going to watch it. And I think most fans are just like me.
You got a diehard fan hat on. I'm talking about not us. Like, we're watch whatever. Like, I'll tune in NFL football no matter who's playing, just like you will. What about the middle of the ground football fans? They ain't tuning in when Lamar Jackson.
Come on.
The product's going to suffer if the product suffers and the games aren't any good because you've watered it down. You've had these guys.
Who do we think
play
the
so
two
many
worst
games?
teams in football are going to be this year?
Wait,
Let's
Panthers.
say it's Carolina.
Let's say Panthers.
And
Panthers
give me any
Panthers.
other. Any other bad team.
Broncos.
I don't care.
Broncos.
All
Give me
right,
the
Panthers, Broncos. Panthers, Broncos taking each other on week 19 in the NFL season on Thursday Night Football on Amazon.
so gross.
With backups in, will still draw better numbers than any NBA game. It'll draw better numbers than World Series games. It'll draw better numbers than NBA Finals. Like, fans will watch it.
That's 1 of 16, by the way. I just want to point out. You're talking about not doing it based on 1 of 16. Okay, even if it's 2 of 16, even if it's 3 of 16, I will suffer 3 bad games. And I'm, by the way, I do not want this in any way, shape, or form. I hate that when they added the extra game, I was like, big deal, 17 games. And then when I realized when I got home from the Super Bowl, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have to unpack my bag. And then 3 days later, I'm going to have to repack my bag. So we have to go to the combine. I don't want this from a personal standpoint, but I didn't look at the product last year on the field and go, man, geez, that 17th game really ruined this. This really destroyed everything. No, I didn't. It didn't. To me, I was just like, this is great. It all worked out fine. And I enjoyed the season just like everyone else. And we get so fixated on one really bad matchup. Oh my God, it's just such a terrible matchup. Really, maybe we should be more fixated on, if you're a warm weather team, you're getting screwed. The longer they keep extending this, if you're the Miami Dolphins, you're like, sweet.
That's true.
Now we might have to play 2 road games in February,
Buffalo
in
and
horrible weather. Yeah, I mean, who knows? Like, it's not. This does from a competitive advantage. Any warm weather team now entering into the playoffs could potentially play a late January, early February game, like back to back in freezing ass cold temperatures. And you cannot tell me, after watching Miami go into Kansas City last year, that did not have a huge competitive edge handed to the Chiefs in that situation.
I just feel like I'm going to be standing there in Speedos and a cape screaming, "Are you not entertained?" And the whole crowd's going to come with me, Frank. I'm just, player safety be damned at this point. Like, it's just, the league's going to do it. The fans are going to watch it. Everybody's
2-1, Frank. 2-1, you lose.
You
lost. You're done.
That's
here's
very
the hot
common
take.
majority here. Yeah. Very good
take us to
democracy
20.
we got going.
Just don't take us to 18. Just take us straight to 20.
But why not 20? If you're saying, well, I didn't notice that's the NFL's way. This is how they do it. All 3 of us know this. That's how the NFL does it. They're like, well, the 17th game, I didn't notice any difference in the product. Well, the 18th game, I didn't notice any difference in the product. All of a sudden, we're going to be sitting here. It's going to be 2034. We're going to be like, the 22nd game really didn't have any effect on the product.
If it goes to 18 games, and let's say the NFL does actually do this whole idea, this intention of, we're going to have at least a bare minimum, a full slate of regular season games overseas. So we're going to have 16 games international.
Don't get me started.
Which is part of this, Frank. That's part of what is going on right now. Part of the
every
metric
week you'll think we'll have one.
Yeah, and we'll have an international game every single week. And so the NFL is going to sit there and they're going to go, well, we have an international audience, and they used to clap for punts. Like, some of these people don't even know what's a bad football game. Like, what can it really hurt if we're sending a game to Australia, if we send a game to China, if we send a game to Dubai? It's the grand scheme here is all about expansion, not just of schedule, but global expansion and spreading TV rights. I mean that, spreading TV rights to every single continent.
And it's not good for the game.
You know that I
It's
hate
just
international
not good for the game
games,
itself.
but if I get Raiders versus, let's say, Rams in the Roman Coliseum, that one I would go to. I'm just throwing out ideas.
Sure,
all
why
right, we got anything else before? I know we're going to get to 100 different things for this episode, but Rob, I will just open the floor to you, good sir, as our insider from the owners' meetings. Has anything else happened that stands out to you of note?
From the owners' meeting standpoint, no, there were some odds and ends. Nothing I think I really want to push here, but I will bring up one thing. And then Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk made this point, and I agree with him. Aaron Rodgers came out in his press conference, and he admitted that the Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the whole vice president thing was real. He said that was real, which means that he absolutely considered at some point doing something that would cause him to step away from the New York Jets. And I cannot believe, and like Mike Florio made this point, like this should be a much bigger story. I can't believe he wasn't pushed on that point in the press conference, that there wasn't a follow-up question like, oh, that was a real thing. So does that mean you would have left the Jets? Can we maybe talk about that? Did you actually really consider this? And then, B, just the fact that no one is really even pointing at that and going, That's the story, right? Like you just said, it really was a thing. Like he might have left the Jets to go be a prospective vice presidential candidate is crazy to me. And it just proves there's so much noise out there around him that even real stories now, you're just kind of like, yeah, let's keep it moving.
I also think it's just like, how often does a guy get offered, hey, try to be vice president of the United States? Like, I just don't think that. I think that's kind of a one-off. The one thing, if I could, real quick, Charles, let me ask you about something because I don't understand this. I've had a busy week. I haven't really fully studied this. And I was something I've been railing about for years and years and years and years. The whole first down marker thing, it just seems to me like the NFL is saying, oh, we know what the problem is. We're going to have our first down marker automatically measure the spot. This fixes everything. Where it's the spot. The spot is the problem. Right. Yeah. It is not the measuring. I've been watching NFL football for 40 years. I can't tell you more than 5 times where I've seen the chain gang get it wrong. Like
it's not the marker. It's the chip in the ball, right? We should be able to measure on the field. Like I get it.
Is that it? Are they measuring like, okay, forward progress was right here. We have a computer that like the in and out line in tennis,
that's
right?
what they should be.
Okay. That's what it should be, right?
Measuring.
That's what it should be.
But is that what they're going to be?
It doesn't seem like they are. It seems like they're just saying, oh, he got the first out based on the spot of the ball. Like, well, that really is not a problem. That's not what we argue. That's what I argue about. I argue with the referees stumbling in off the sideline, not like me on a Saturday night, not knowing where to put the ball. They just guess. They're off by a yard or two each way, and then they're measuring by like millimeter, like the Gene Steratore index card, right? So I just don't understand. This hasn't fixed anything. Everybody's like, oh wow, it's so past time for this, and it really hasn't fixed it.
It's the start of the fix, though, don't you think?
I hope so.
When they start injecting things like this into
it's the NFL's way. Yes,
we're taking
and stuff. A little bit at a time.
If we are in a technology world where they can simulcast a Nickelodeon broadcast that is using the technology of knowing where the players are to actually show you cartoon versions of them, then they know where the football is. They just got to choose to use that technology for that.
They could tell you that Derrick Henry rushes 21.59 miles an hour, but yet we can't spot a football on the field.
We all should have been watching Nickelodeon to know where the balls needs to be spotted. That's
the only thing I'll say
Mr.
before
Krabs
we move on,
told us for sure. Yeah.
I will say this one thing about Aaron Rodgers. You're right, Frank. It's rare that you're offered the opportunity to be vice president. I would also say you're being offered the opportunity to be vice president on a platform that has virtually no shot at winning. But then above and beyond all of that, you're the same person that a few months ago said, we just need to get all of the noise out of this locker room that isn't about football. And now you're standing here saying, yeah, but I considered running for vice president. Like there is a level of hypocrisy there. And I know that God forbid anybody say anything wrong about Aaron Rodgers. So go on Pat's show and eviscerate all of us for doing it. But you cannot tell me that it is not hypocritical to stand there and say this team needs to get rid of everything in the locker room that isn't about football. Then stand up at a press conference and say you considered running for vice president. You are now telling the team that they should get rid of you. That's all I'm saying.
100%.
It'll never happen. But that's
I can't disagree there. That's totally a good point.
All right. Wednesday is 100 days from the start of the season. So Frank wrote an article, God love him for this, 100 things he's looking forward to this upcoming season. So we figured we'd break all 100 down. And then we realized that was way too much work. So we're not going to do that. Sorry. You're going to have to bleep out the F word there. We're not going to get through 100 of these. So instead, we've each picked 3 things and then we'll have a group bonus thing that we're going to look at. By the way, Frank, how long did it take you to write an article of 100 things you're excited for?
I'm not going to lie to you. I thought, okay, Al Toby, our NFL editor, was like, I got this idea. And I'm like, oh, that sounds really fun. And I did it. And I basically brain dumped. And I'm like, okay, I'm set. And I was like, I got 71. I'm like 2/3 of the way through this and I got nothing else. So you'll find when I publish this Wednesday that you could probably find some of the 29 where you're like, this is just he's making
this just tells you that when Frank sits down and has to spill out his musings, he has roughly 70 in his head at any given time.
That's give me a lot of credit, Charles. A lot. 71 is
I
way
certainly
too
want
many.
to write that article with you two, where we'll just say, okay, how many ideas can you come up with? You each pitch it, and then one of you finally says, write that article, and then we read it at the end and see if you actually did it justice. Okay, we would let Frank go first, but we're not going to do that because C-Rob's the special guest this week. So C-Rob, you get to give us the first thing on your mind of the 100 things that you're most excited about this season. Take it away.
Jim Harbaugh, right? I've covered the league long enough that I literally remember covering Jim Harbaugh with the 49ers. And I remember sitting through some of the press conferences when things weren't going well. That last season in San Francisco, they were 8-8, but it really wasn't even the football wasn't the problem. It was everything else that was going on in ownership and with the front office. And he was a miserable human being by the end of that season. Every bit as miserable, I would argue, in those press conferences as Bill Belichick has ever been in New England. We have just forgotten that because it's been a while since we've seen that Jim Harbaugh. But to me, it's interesting. I went back and I looked, and this guy, we all know it, but I think we forget how much success he has reached everywhere he has gone as a head coach. University of San Diego, the last year there, after having a run of success, he was 12-1, including a bowl win his last year there. Stanford, his last year, building Stanford back into a power. He was 13-1, including a bowl win his last year there. Michigan, 15-0, wins a national championship, wins 2 playoff games, wins a Big Ten Conference championship game. And then obviously the 49ers, 3 of his 4 years, double-digit wins. Like I said, he did have the 8-8 season at the end, but I remember being in the middle of that as a reporter amongst a number of other reporters, and I do not put that 8-8 season on him. I frankly put it on ownership because it allowed a monumental amount of chaos to happen between Trent Baalke, the general manager, and Jim Harbaugh, the head coach at that time, that absolutely, I think, ruined the entire dynamic of that organization. But he went 49-22-1 with the 49ers, went to a Super Bowl, won an NFC championship game, did it with different quarterbacks, made Alex Smith a viable quarterback, made Colin Kaepernick a viable quarterback in this league. And then he's Jim Harbaugh, right? Like, he's crazy. Like, there's a craziness to
camper,
him.
For God's sake.
He's the closest thing we have to a cartoon as a head coach in our league now. And I am very, very excited to see what he does with the Los Angeles Chargers and Justin Herbert. And he's been a man of his word. Went in talking about, we're going to run the ball. Offensive line's important. He's done nothing but commit to that this offseason. And I don't think there's any question. He is absolutely 100% going to do it his way. And low key, I might even look after the 2024 season. I wonder if there's a larger swath of personnel change there in terms of the players after the 2024 season than we expect, including maybe even some big names, because I think he's going to measure in 2024 who doesn't need to be there.
That, though, Frank, is part of what I always say is part of the Sean Payton conversation that you and I had last year at the beginning of the year. Part of the reason that I think Harbaugh is going to be great, but I don't think the Chargers are going to be great this year, is because when new coaches come in that are of the level that Harbaugh's in, they spend that first year sort of figuring it out, looking it around, seeing who fits the culture, seeing who can actually do what they want them to do, and then they rip it apart, they rebuild it in their image. Like, I think the Broncos in time are going to be very good because I believe in time Sean Payton can be Sean Payton. I think that Harbaugh and the Chargers in time could turn out to be great. I just think this year is going to be a little bit of an up and down sort of seesaw. Prove it. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Chargers not have a great season, but still be putting together the building blocks for a great run with Harbaugh.
Yeah, I'm really down on the Chargers this year because I just think the personnel's not as good as we think it is. And 9 years away from the NFL is a really, really long time. But the one thing I will say, when I was looking, I did the same thing Charles did. You look back at, wow, let's look at this guy's resume for a second. And I always thought it was a transition year and then he was really good. And if you look at his college days, that's really what happened. Like, there was a year or two where it was okay and then he really took off. 49ers, he was 13-3 out of the gates, if I remember right. And so I'm like, maybe I'm just wrong. I want to know what Charles thinks, because I think me and you, Fitz, we're on the same page where there's going to be a transition year and Harbaugh's going to be good, just not in 2024. Charles, what do you think he does year one? Do you think it's going to be, oh my God, they beat the Chiefs for the division? Or, yeah, of course, it took Harbaugh a year to get everything set before he really takes off in 2025?
I think the division is to me, I do think there's an ability for him to come in and immediately be successful. I mean, if you look at San Francisco, he was lit year one, double-digit wins, went to the playoffs. I mean, they have talent on that team. And he's already starting to reshape it into the type of offense that he wants it to be. So like, and again, the division, sorry, Fitz, but there's still two soft teams in this division between the Raiders and the Broncos. Those are teams that are still clearly transitioning. The Raiders don't have a quarterback yet that we know of for sure long term. And, maybe Minshew finally becomes that guy and ascends and becomes like a Jake Delhomme type player moving forward. But that hasn't happened yet. We don't know. I know Peyton Manning said Bo Nix is a great fit for the Broncos' super quarterback-friendly offense. Awesome. That doesn't tell me that it's going to click into place for Denver right away. So, you have two still softish teams in the division. The Chiefs are the Chiefs. You got to deal with that. But I think all in all, he's going to have a more monumental impact walking in there. And I think he's a more decisive coach in terms of how he wants to do things, sticking to what the culture is going to be. Whereas with Brandon Staley, I felt like he was much more of a flip-flopper from one year to the next than I really expected, not only in terms of like his coaching decisions, but even what the culture was supposed to be inside that organization.
All right, Frank, I know you went through 100 different things. So give me one, the first one that comes to mind of the things you're looking forward to this season.
A guy we talked about, it's Aaron Rodgers. We forget that a year ago, that was the talk of the NFL. Aaron Rodgers going to New York, getting a fresh start, second NFL team, and then 4 plays later, he blows out his Achilles. And I think that adds to the intrigue for this year. You're adding a year onto his age. He's 41 now, going to turn 41 in December. He's coming off an Achilles, which for a 21-year-old quarterback is difficult, much less a 41-year-old. But the same kind of upside is there for the Jets, I think. That defense is awesome. They kept them in games last year where they had 0 quarterback play at all. Breece Hall might be the second best running back in the NFL. Garrett Wilson might be a top 5 receiver, and on and on. This Jets team was set up to be really, really good last year. We all know what happened. They're set up to be really, really good again this year. I'm excited to see what happens. And even if it fails, it's going to fail spectacularly. We know that Aaron Rodgers can't go quietly into the night. This is going to be either Jets are in the AFC Championship game or Aaron Rodgers decides to go into politics by Thanksgiving. Like, it's going to be something crazy.
Frank, you're in Atlantic City, right? This is the last stack of chips you have at the roulette table.
Yep.
You've lost and doubled your bet. You've lost and doubled your bet. You've lost and doubled your bet. And now you're standing there and you're holding it and you're going, I just need to get back to even. So I'm taking everything I have left and I'm putting it on one spin of the wheel just so I can get myself back to even. It is the gambler sickness. Okay. That's what the Jets are with Aaron Rodgers. And I'm with you. I think if this fails, it's going to be the, you put it all on black or you put it all on red and it hit double green. Like it's not, it is just going to be the absolute wipeout situation, and I'm here for it. I want all of it. Give me all of it.
And I'll tell you this. I'll take a stand and I'll say I think the Jets win that division. I think they're Super Bowl contenders. I'm really high on this because I just think I watch that Jets team and I'm like, if they weren't an F- at quarterback, what would they be? And I don't think Aaron Rodgers is an F-. I don't think he's anywhere close to that. I don't think he's washed yet. And if they get a B- out of him, I think they're really, really good. I'm all in on this Jets thing. Well, understanding C-Rob, it could be.
I am all out on the Jets. I'm all out on the Jets, Frank. And I think show me the last time that organization handled mass chaos. And if this season even starts slightly slow, it'll be mass chaos. I also don't trust any of the old quarterbacks in this league that are coming off an Achilles, cough, Kirk Cousins. I don't trust any of them coming right in. I don't trust that offensive line to stay healthy. So, Frank, right here, right now, this early in the season, I will bet you, since we will be together at the Super Bowl, I will bet you a steak dinner at the place of your choosing regarding the Jets. All right, so here's the wager. Like, we'll leave a little wiggle room because you said Super Bowl. So I'll say, and I don't think they're even a playoff team. So we'll meet in the middle. 1 playoff win. That's the bet, all right?
Okay.
If the Jets win 1 playoff game, then I will buy you a steak dinner anywhere you want. If they do not win one playoff game, you are buying me a steak dinner anywhere I want. Are we in on this?
That sounds good. It also has to include a shot and a drink if it's Super Bowl week.
It's all on the Yahoo expense account. This is such a bullshit bet.
Okay. I hadn't even thought of that. No. See, I said a nice steak
Hey,
dinner. Like
yeah.
we got a cap on how much we're allowed to spend a day on food. I'm gonna make Frank pay. I'm gonna
we
make
don't
Frank
got the
sweat a
black
little bit
card
when the
here.
wallet
Yeah,
comes out.
right,
Like
yeah.
it's gonna be shady. See, Rob, what's a better bet then? Like, I mean, we can pay for it out of our personal accounts.
Hey, I have a photo of Frank handing me a crisp $100 bill that is my favorite
Oh my God, I hate
Yahoo
that
related
so
photo.
much. I hate that picture so much.
I got a picture of it, and
I
it is
hate
it is absolutely the centerpiece of my memories with Frank was his pissed off look handing me a $100 bill. It should just be cash, straight up.
All right, so here's the new bet. All right, I like this cash $100 bill. I like this a lot, and we will just have C-Rob there. All right, to adjudicate the presentation of the $100 bill between us, and then we can turn around and make this. The bet's on. I'm out on the Jets.
I can't have another one of these pictures of me handing a $100 bill to a fellow coworker. The Charles one's terrible enough. I have to win this bet, but it's on. Jets are going to win a playoff game. The Jets are going to be good.
All right, I'll give you my one thing, and you guys mentioned chaos, but you've left out the most chaotic thing in the world because let's face it, if the Cowboys this year, the Cowboys are chaotic no matter what happens. Hear me out. If they suck, then everybody's just going to be going absolutely apoplectic from the beginning of the season about Dak and about McCarthy and about everything that's happening. But Dak particularly this year is one of the 100 things I'm most excited about because if it stinks, then we're going to sit here and say, oh my God, what are the Cowboys doing? But even better, if he's an MVP this year, remembering they cannot franchise him, they cannot trade him. If he's an MVP this year, even if they come in and they offer him all of the gold and all of the lands, he could still be like, nah, I kind of want to test the market. I kind of want to date a little bit. He can still start swiping right. He can still see other people. The fact that Dak Prescott can look at Jerry Jones and say, no amount of cash, good sir, will keep me off the market. I want Dak to go to the Super Bowl. I want Dak to win an MVP. And then I want Dak to look the Cowboys squarely in the eyes and say, nah, I'm good. I want to see other people before I commit to you just to see what happens. But whether he's good or whether he's terrible, the drama of Dak is certainly one of the 100 best stories of this year, C-Rob.
And you have the whole Mike McCarthy contract. I mean, this is Mike McCarthy's last year of his deal. And Bill Belichick's out there. And people are going to keep bringing up Bill Belichick as being the guy who could walk into this team and take over if things go badly. And I would argue not only if things go badly, but if things go well and Dak leaves, I wonder if that is not still an inflection point for Jerry Jones to go, well, okay, we're losing Dak. We're kind of rebooting a little bit here now that we don't have a quarterback. We have to figure this out. Maybe I bring in Bill anyway, unless Mike McCarthy has had some kind of a run. So if that happens and let's say Dak takes him to the NFC title game, let's say Dak takes him to a Super Bowl, then yeah, I think they're screwed in one respect, really, with Dak. But if that doesn't happen, if they fall short again, if they lose in the first round of the playoffs, so they get a bye and lose in the divisional round, Mike McCarthy to me is definitely canned. And you have to question, okay, well, is Dak staying and we're swapping out the coach at this point? Is Dak going and we're swapping out the coach and the quarterback? I mean, there's a multitude of different things that could happen here, and it all smells to me like a rebuild unless there's a serious, significant run this year.
By the way, the beauty of the Cowboys is what you just kind of alluded to, that like they could make the divisional round they could win 14 games, make the divisional round of the playoffs, and they lose, and it is going to be, oh my God, you got to implode everything. That's just the greatness of Cowboys freak out. I'm here for it. I love it. Because Fitz was talking about, well, if Dak is terrible, this could happen. If Dak is good, this could happen. Dak could be great, and they have one bad day, and Cowboys Nation's going to just be throwing up their hands like the sky is falling, and I love it.
Frank, what if Dak is Phillip Rivers and the Cowboys are the Chargers under Phillip Rivers?
Oh, I think they are. I don't think this team's ever making a Super Bowl.
What if there are a lot of talent and we look back? I mean, we look back at those Chargers teams and we go, oh my God, they were loaded. Like literally a lot of years they were loaded and they just never got over the hump. And we question is Phillip Rivers, is he for sure Hall of Famer? I think he is, but I understand the question why it's an argument.
Absolutely.
But the difference here on all of this is that next year's quarterback class in the draft isn't all that great. So if Dak is Phillip Rivers,
we don't know that yet.
As of right now, there are going to be organizations that either don't love the quarterback or won't be in a spot to get the quarterbacks that will be in a spot to pay Dak. He's going to get paid. All right. We're going to keep giving you some of our favorite of the 100 best storylines. When we come back, we've got a couple more each that we'll throw at you. All right, the fun is just beginning. C-Rob, you are back on the clock as we look at the 100 things that we're excited about 100 days before the start of the season. Give me another one on your mind.
Listen, Pittsburgh, I know right now the Russell Wilson, Justin Fields thing. Okay, hey, it's all happy. Hey, they're out on the field together. They're throwing. There's going to be all this talk about what Fields can learn from Russell Wilson, who's that veteran. And, like Russ is the starter. He's the unquestioned starter. That's coming from inside the organization. It feels like there's all these efforts right now to push past any idea that this could be awkward or problematic as time rolls on. But here's the thing. You have two quarterbacks right now, neither anchored to any kind of contractual coverage in 2025. These are two guys who want deals. They want money, okay? They want to know they're going to have a starting spot in 2025 and beyond. And that's not just Russ. It's Justin Fields, who's sitting there and has admitted, hey, I'm here to compete. Like, I'm as much as the organization is sitting there saying, Russ is the guy, this is the setup, we know how we want this. I think what ultimately is going to end up happening in Pittsburgh, if it goes the way the organization wants it, Russ will be the unquestioned starter, but Fields will get some red zone snaps and they'll work out some packages to try and take advantage of him and get him on the football field. But you can't tell me there's not going to be an element of awkwardness there, because Justin Fields absolutely wants to be able to play himself into a starting level opportunity in 2025 and beyond, whether that's with the Steelers or not. And Russell Wilson is in the same situation. When he feels that kid coming and pushing, and there might be any kind of an issue in the locker room over, like, hey, are they choosing sides? Is Russ playing well enough to hold this job? I do think there's a setup there in Pittsburgh for potential awkwardness. Just remember this when we're in like October or November and maybe things aren't going as well as people think. And one last thing I would inject into this, there's also a wide receiver named George Pickens, who is going to be looking to start contract extension talks next offseason. What typically happens with any wide receiver, let's just take out George Pickens' history, with any wide receiver who could be going into an offseason for contract extension talks where things aren't going perfectly at quarterback and they're not getting fed the football. So now you have a third person who's injected into the middle of this mix, whose career moving forward and extension potential after the 2024 season is dependent upon the quarterback. You can't tell me that Pickens isn't going to sit there and go, this guy gives me the chance to get that bag this summer. I am absolutely going to back this guy. Now tell me which guy that is.
Yeah, George isn't shy about drama either. We found that out last year.
So
he ain't gonna be quiet. Yeah, I love that. I love that little side note to it. I've said my piece on this. I still will sit here and die on this hill, and I don't think Russell Wilson starts week 1 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have nothing invested in him. What happens if he balls out?
That's not what they want, though. You know that, right, Frank? They do not want that.
I think it's different. I do know that, yes. But I think it's different saying that in May and then getting to August and being like, man, what's his upside? The upside for Russ is he balls out for you, and then what? You give him a 4-year deal at age 37? Like, I get it. Yeah. I just don't think there's any long-term aspirations with Russell Wilson, who got a $1.2 million deal for 1 year. I think they're as far as everybody's out on Justin Fields, right? Like, I get that I'm one of the last people who thinks he could still be something, but he at least gives you some hope. And Russell gives none of that. So I think that's a
Justin Fields just went from a potential situation where look at the skill position pieces they have at wide receiver in Chicago, right? Oh, yeah. Now, if he does start in Pittsburgh, he gets Pickens, who's mercurial, right? Let's be honest. He's been a mercurial guy, right?
Great way to put it. Yeah.
He gets Van Jefferson.
Oh,
okay. And Roman Wilson, who, loved him at Michigan. Probably could have put up bigger numbers if it had been more of a passing attack than a running attack. I get it. But again, those are your top 3 receivers. And then Pat Freiermuth, it's not exactly humming, I would say right now, at the skill position pieces at Pittsburgh yet. And he needs snaps with those guys, just like last year we were saying, well, geez, he needs snaps with these new skill position pieces and he'll get better and better and better. It's just not set up for that. The whole situation right now is, it's loaded for something bad to happen at some point in November.
I agree. By the way, I can't remember a situation like this where 2 guys were brought in the same offseason, different points in their it's fascinating. I totally agree with you. Something I'm looking forward to as well.
All right, give me something else you're looking forward to. Frank, you're up next.
I'm just going to talk about the guy who replaced Justin Fields. That's Caleb Williams. I want to see is he worth the hype? We've seen top pick quarterbacks come in and falter a little bit. I'm not saying that he's going to be Bryce Young. because Bryce Young was set up in such a bad situation. Caleb was set up in such a good situation. But we see number one picks kind of stumble all the time. I don't think Caleb's going to be that guy, but Bears fans have been waiting so long for a decent quarterback. I'm not even talking about good. He doesn't need to be CJ Stroud. He just needs to be decent, and he'll be the toast of the city. Can he do that, especially year one? We're all looking at the situation and saying, everything's set up for you. As Charles was just talking about, he's got Keenan Allen now. DJ Moore, to me, is a top 10 receiver. Just drafted Roma Dunze. They got Komet. They just signed DeAndre Swift. This team is set up for Caleb Williams to have a CJ Stroud type of season. Can he do it? Because these Bears fans have been waiting so long. This is a team I'm going to be picking to the playoffs. I like them. I like what they did late last season. I like the addition of Caleb Williams here, but it's no sure thing. And I think all eyes are going to be on Caleb because he's also one of those guys. He's just, people are ready, with all the talk about, maybe I won't go to the NFL next year. I want to pick my team, whatever, all this controversy. He's already one of those polarizing guys. So I'm just interested in the whole Caleb Williams experience. I think it's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, I don't, the one thing I will say about Caleb and Chicago, like, I look at Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis, right? And Anthony Richardson only had a 4-game snapshot, but he did the one thing he needed to do for everyone to go, hey, yeah, fine, season-ending shoulder injury, surgery, but God, we love this dude and we can't wait for year 2. He was exciting. You watched him and you were like, holy, like he might go 5 for 17, but man, it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun to watch. I think Caleb Williams has a lot of that in him. He's going to throw interceptions. He's going to do some stuff where you're like, what the hell is he doing? He might get clocked a couple of times because he's doing things out of structure he shouldn't be doing. But he's going to do a lot of exciting stuff. You and I are going to be texting each other going like, oh my God, did you see the throw? This dude just... Like,
and it could be either way. It could be, did you see that throw? That interception was the worst thing I've ever seen.
But the flash moments that are super exciting, even if he has, let's say, a middle-of-the-road normal rookie quarterback season, right? Where it's 50-50 interceptions and touchdowns, runs for a few, but showcases that arm and does a lot of wild, exciting stuff. It'll keep Bears fans, I think, on the hook.
By the way, I think what I've just learned is yet again, C-Rob wants a group text that I'm not part of. Like, he's just going to text Frank, not going to text me about it. It's fine. I think Caleb's going to be great. I think the Bears are going to be great. But Anthony Richardson could have been on the list when you mentioned it. It just reminded me how excited I am to see what he looks like this year. But I went with a different quarterback, and it's the Burrow is back storyline here. But I'm going to really twist it a little bit to an if not now, then when. Because I feel like Joe Burrow has somehow managed to just water off a duck's back when it comes to any criticism about the injury history he's had since he came into the league and any sort of weighted expectations. Every offseason, it's like, oh, the Bills can't get over the hump. They're done. They're screwed. There's nothing they can do. We haven't done that with the Bengals. And the Bengals have shown that they are all in right now and believing that they are a Super Bowl caliber team. Otherwise, they would have traded T. Higgins to me. Like, it would have made a lot of sense, but they didn't want to do that this year. They didn't do that because Burrow's back, which is genuinely an exciting thing for the AFC. But man, there should be just mountains of pressure. He may not feel it, but there are mountains of pressure around the Bengals to me, Frank, because I'm looking at Burrow and I'm saying, A, you got to stay healthy. B, you got to remind everybody that you are great. C, you got to be able to get out there and be the best of yourself or the Bengals don't have a shot. And D, you were anointed quickly as the quarterback that can take on Mahomes, so you have to step right back into that. So it's not just that Burrow is back. It's that Burrow's back, and that should make the Bengals a Super Bowl contender. If they're not, everything is chaos for Cincinnati.
I really just want to see the hair on Sunday. You saw that salad he's got going on.
Was good.
Goodness, like Joe Burrow, you were holding that back from us the whole time. Come on, like, can you get the helmet on over that thing? That was, as somebody who has challenged that way, I was very, very jealous of Joe Burrow. But back to football, I do agree with you. There's a lot on the line for Joe this year, and I don't know about you, Charles, but when I'm hearing him, like, maybe it's just me, maybe I just get a little nervous about things. But when he's up there, his first time talking to Cincinnati media, and he's saying, yeah, I still have a lot of pain, but whatever. That's kind of part of the process. And then he's like, man, I researched back through the years, and as far as I could tell, I'm the only quarterback who has dealt with this injury. I'm like, oh goodness, this is bad. Like, maybe I'm just like a little too nervous, and he's gonna be totally fine. There's no negative reports on him from camp or anything, but how nervous are you about Joe Burrow? Because I'm, at least when I hear no quarterback has ever dealt with this injury, I'm a little bit of concern that it's just not going to be as seamless as we hope.
Well, look, we watched Cam Newton's career, right? Like, that guy, the injuries started to pile up for Cam. And we were robbed of what at one point was an unbelievable talent in our league. And I feel like the wave has hit much earlier for Burrow. So yeah, clearly I'm nervous. You've had 2 season-ending injuries. He does tend to take a lot of punishment. He does tend to hang on to the ball and throw it over the middle so that he can make a play, but then he gets absolutely drilled in the process. I'm nervous for him because I love the league for the quarterbacks, and to me, we are much worse off as NFL fans if this guy ends up having the type of career where he's bouncing his hand off of helmets, or he's tearing an ACL, or God knows what else could potentially happen. This is going to be a big deal for him to be healthy over the course of this season, and I think it's on the organization, it's on the OC. Everybody's got to sit there and go, we need to streamline things to make sure this guy is protected, and also probably have a talk with Joe too, that maybe holding on to the ball to make the big play is not always going to be in your best interest right now. Let's augment what you're doing right now to protect yourself a little bit more than we have in the past.
All right, C-Rob, one more from each of us. Give us one more thing that you're excited for of the 100 things that Frank has narrowed down.
Yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr. I just in general, what is going to happen with him? On the field will definitely whitewash anything else. So if he goes out and he's the Marvin Harrison Jr. that we saw at Ohio State, that people have been expecting for a long time, there's not going to be a lot of talk about anything else surrounding him. But let's be real, leading into the NFL, good God, it's not like it's anything that absolutely is a deal breaker in any way, shape, or form, right? Yeah, he sat out the entire draft process. Wow, never seen anybody do that where they're just like, yeah, not going to do anything, and because I know my value, which by the way, he was right.
He was
not
right
going to do anything. He was 100% right. He went 4. He was going 4 no matter what. But still, he did it, which became a thing around him. You're like, okay, wow, he's doing it his own way. Okay, a lot of receivers do it their own way, but this guy is it's not just verbal. He's doing things off the field that are just different in terms of how he handles his I guess brand coming into the league, and also his talent. Now he's getting sued by Fanatics, obviously the massive apparel company, and they're in autographs, they're in sports trading cards, all these different things, and that is sticky. They're saying breach of contract, $1 million deal that he signed in 2023. They're saying he's in breach of contract for it. Didn't go to the NFLPA events, still has not signed off on his licensing deal with the NFLPA, probably because all this Fanatics garbage that's all tied up in this. It's just a lot. I'm like, man, this is a lot of stuff we're talking about with him. What's going to happen as we move forward? What if he struggles? What if there are any other problems? Again, I don't think it'll matter if he balls out, but it's been a while since I can remember a receiver coming into the league where I'm like, man, we're talking about a lot of just kind of side drama stuff. Again, not the worst things in the world, but it is a lot of side drama stuff that has to do with his brand, how he handles his talent, him doing his thing his own way. That's how his career is starting off, which is always interesting to me.
I actually appreciate a lot of it because it's, at least in my mind, he's paving the way for other guys. Like when guys started sitting out of bowl games, right? We were like, well, what the heck is going on? And then everybody was like, oh, actually, nobody had ever done that before. That's actually a pretty good idea. I'm going to do that. And now guys are sitting out of bowl games. I know a lot of people hate that, but I'm just talking about guys who kind of change a perception of what needs to happen to enter the NFL. Like you said, Marvin Harrison said, I'm going for whether I do any of this or not. So I'm not sure. I'm not going to talk to anybody at the combine. I'm not going to work out. I'm not doing your private workouts. What do I care? You're drafted before regardless. And if you don't, I'll probably be drafted number 5. He goes number 4. And I think other guys later on are going to say, wow, Marvin Harrison did that.
Small group that can do that.
Yeah, and when we worked with Damian Harris on the draft show, he pointed out, to your point, C-Rob, that Dame was saying, look, if Marvin's great, it's no issue. Everybody's going to love him.
Right.
If he's not right out of the gates, this all becomes part of the conversation. Like if you're not signing the NFLPA deal and all of a sudden you're not having your jersey sold and you're not in the video games and all these things, that becomes a little conversation in the locker room.
Fitz, that's one thing that's key here too. None of this is inside of any kind of team structure, right? Like what he did in the NFL, he was not on an NFL team at that point. That was, hey, I'm Marvin Harrison. I'm my own corporation right now. I'm doing the best I can do to get to the table and preserving my corporation the way I want to preserve it. The fanatic stuff doesn't have anything to do with the Arizona Cardinals. So far, none of this has anything to do with what Marvin Harrison is contributing to his franchise. If it switches or bleeds over, if it starts to become things that do directly impact the Arizona Cardinals, then it's an entirely different conversation. I think all this other stuff, it's just side noise, whatever. If he performs, who cares? But if it starts to bleed into what is going on inside the Cardinals organization, like it did for Kyler Murray, then maybe things are a little different.
All right, Frank, give me something else you're pumped about.
Yeah, real quick, I will say this about Marvin Harrison Jr. I think we will be sitting here by January, and none of this is going to be conversation because we're going to be like, wow, he went for 1,400 yards. Like, he is just so good. Like, I hope he is, and I hope none of this is a sign of things to come where he's like skipping training camp or whatever it would be, to your point, where it would all of a sudden affect the Cardinals that much. I'm going to go with everyone's favorite brother duo, the Kelces. First of all, Travis. Like, I think if the Kansas City Chiefs win a third straight Super Bowl, which has never been done before, and he has the type of season he usually has, I don't see how he's not considered the greatest tight end of all time. I'm a Rob Gronkowski guy just because I thought Rob Gronkowski was so dynamic as a blocker to go along with his pass catching that he could have been like a left tackle in the NFL. He was that good of a blocker at tight end. He was unbelievably dominant at that part of his job. And also one of the most dynamic pass catchers I've ever seen. That I've always been a Gronkowski guy, but if Travis Kelce, if they win again, and he's a big, big part of it, like he probably would be, I think at that point, Kelce's has to be the greatest tight end of all time. I think that pursuit is really interesting. And I know Jason Kelce is retired, but that's good for us because, you know, he plays center for the Philadelphia Eagles. That's fun. He's great. He's on the podcast. We see that side of him, but now he's going to be on TV. And I think I go back to that Super Bowl parade and that speech he gave. He's not going to be doing that, you know, on Monday Night Countdown. But I think that this dude, we saw the Buffalo game where he's up in the luxury box and all that. He has the type of personality to be almost, this is almost sacrilegious, but almost like a Charles Barkley type of commentator on the NFL side. I think Jason Kelce can be awesome at this job. I can't wait to see it. I know everybody's waiting for the Brady broadcasting debut. We kind of know what we're going to get out of Brady. It's not going to be outrageous. It's not going to be crazy. I think Jason Kelce could be crazy and an absolutely fun ride on TV.
Yeah, he connects, right? I mean, that's that's it. That's the bottom line. He connects with the audience. He connects with regular, everyday people. The one thing, though, is I want to see, it's one thing to connect on a podcast, right? Where it's a safer environment, right? But I mean, when you start to get into these situations where you're expected to be critical of other NFL players, you're expected to be who you are. Part of like when I watch the Manning cast, what I enjoy the most is watching literally Peyton Manning being incapable of not being honest with his emotions when he's watching a football game. Like somebody does something stupid, Peyton flips out the way I would flip out, the way like, I'm like, this to me is what connects. He's as real as he can possibly be. And I wouldn't ever put that on Jason, by the way. I think it's the corporations that ultimately strip that away from you. Right? They're the ones that on our podcast bleep us out or cut certain segments of podcasts that they don't think like it's. I hope he doesn't get sanitized moving forward by corporations that sit there and go, we can't just let him be the bare-chested, drinking beers, jumping down in the stands kind of guy that he is, which is what everybody loves.
Hopefully, the way ESPN has handled McAfee shows that they will be capable of letting Kelce be himself, to your point. All right, I'll give you one more, and I will go full homer, but it was on the list, so I'm allowed. But in all joking aside, I think that one of the most exciting things you get anytime you have a new coach is an opportunity to find out the new personality of an organization. So Antonio Pierce was an interim coach for the Raiders, obviously is now the full-time coach for the Raiders. And guys, I have no idea what to expect. I didn't expect much when he became the interim coach last year. And all of the talk about, you know, the Raider way and all of the things that it seems like cliches. But when I talk to guys that are in that locker room, they tell you that it's not, that there's a different energy. The guys love being there every single day. Guys want to be around his energy. In a world where I think the best coaches are the ones that identify with the city and the franchise, the guys that really know how to turn teams around are guys, look in Detroit, that sort of know how to get the vibe of the city and the vibe of the organization. It feels right now in this honeymoon period like Antonio Pierce has a real opportunity to do that. Now, there has to be adults in the room, and you're still going to have to be able to out strategize other coaches. You're going to have to be a great coach. But from what I've seen so far, what excites me this year is that it's somebody that easily identifies with what it means to be part of this organization and this franchise. And sometimes you need somebody that loves it that much to help turn it around. I don't know if it'll happen, but C-Rob, I'm excited about it because it feels like there's a different energy in the building than there has been, even from the outside looking in, for years, no matter who the coach has been. AP has done that.
Yeah, and you brought up one name, I'll bring up another. You brought up Dan Campbell. I'll also bring up Mike Tomlin. I think there are coaches that get into positions. Mike Tomlin was never a coordinator, right? Before he became the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, Dan Campbell had a flame out, right? As an interim with the Miami Dolphins. And yet these were two guys who came in and they did two things. They set a culture in the organization. They connected with the city in the locker room. Those are the two things that I think, Antonio Pierce can do here is set a culture in place, connect with the locker room, connect with the city, connect with the fan base. And we've seen where it took, obviously a large talent infusion helped. We've seen where it took Detroit, right? We saw where it ultimately took the Pittsburgh Steelers over the course of Tomlin's career. You can argue about the Super Bowls or whatever, but tremendous amount of success. And also two coaches that have an immense amount of respect, especially Tomlin, but now also Campbell, I think, has earned it around the league as not just leaders, but how they handle their entire franchise and the organization moving outward. And to me, that's where Pierce really sits right now, is the start of that journey.
This was the right hire. Let's see what Antonio Pierce has, because like you said, that franchise, that fan base really got behind him. What's a harm? What's a harm in seeing if he can keep that going?
Fitz's new his whole new kick of eating the same thing and following all these trainers' directions. He's got the sniffles this entire show.
I know.
And I'm like, Fitz, you're sick. This isn't working.
Allergies. It's allergies. Allergies are killing me. Allergies. I'm trying not to, and I can't. It just keeps happening. And I'm sorry because it sounds obnoxious, but I'm letting it run down my face. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? It's the worst. Oh, you can find us on social media at Jason Fitz, at Charles Robinson, at Yahoo Schwab. C-Mac will be back with the exempt list next week. Of course, we got more Zero Blitz next Thursday as we continue to do these Voltron Power episodes. Jori will be with us next week. C-Rob gets next week off, so no sniffles for you. But, if you want, I can send you pictures to let you know how the ab work is coming. Once I get the abs chiseled in, C-Rob, since you're not here every week, if you want the weekly ab update, I'm happy to. No, I don't think he does. He doesn't want the weekly ab update. Okay, fine. That's fine. It's fine. That's fine. I'll go on this journey by myself. Thanks for hanging out with us. Rate, subscribe, review. Leave a 5-star review. Anything less than a 5-star review, don't rate us, okay? But leave us that great review. Tell your friends, your family, and enemies to hang out with us. Thanks for hanging out with us every single week.